Welcome to today's video. In today's video, we're going to talk about 5 secrets that credit card companies don't want you to know and how to keep more money in your pocket just by being mindful of these things. If you or someone you know is thinking about getting their very first credit card, congratulations, looking at your statement and just don't know what these fees that you're paying are for, or just struggling with your credit card management with your balance, keep watching because in today's video, I'm going to go over a few things that are nuances on how the credit card companies charge you, how they make money off of you, and even back-end ways that you can save money with or without using your credit card. Just a quick note that the content in this video is solely for informational purposes and you should not make any financial decisions based on what I say. And my experience is basically solely on North American credit cards and North American systems, so I understand that this might not apply to everybody, but if you're from North America, then definitely keep watching. Some things I'm going to be covering are interest, fees, merchant fees, which you don't pay for but indirectly do, and some behavioral traps with reward programs. I decided to make this video because recently we were having a networking dinner with some other locals that are currently here in Guatemala, and I was speaking to a lady, she's a financial advisor, and she speaks to people about long-term planning and building wealth here for people in Honduras, Guatemala, and some in the States as well. And she told me the number one worst invention of human history is credit cards. Now, I agree to disagree with her. I think they can be amazing tools for people that know how to use them, but I even have paid a few fees in my day of using credit cards that I didn't necessarily need to pay for because I didn't understand how they work. So, let's get into it. Number one and most important thing about credit cards, and the number one thing people spend money on, is interest fees. So we know about interest fees, right? You know, if you don't pay your balance, you pay a percentage on whatever you don't pay at the end of the month. But the stats show people might not be very good at managing this. The average rate, the APR of credit cards is 23%. And in the United States of America alone, the average amount that people spent on interest fees alone last year in 2023 was $1,657 on average per person. That is crazy. Over a 5-year period, if you just didn't pay for that interest and you instead put it towards stocks, which, you know, on average maybe yielded 7%, I have my numbers here, you would have $11,853 in savings that you could spend on other things or continue saving for the long term, instead of having that $8,285 go to credit card fees. That's insane. So let's learn a bit more about what an interest fee is and how it might be getting even worse over time. So interest fees, even though the average is 23%, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. One, the interest rate that you see on your credit card is known as APR. APR does not account for compounding. So at the end of every month, you might notice if you don't pay your bill on time, you'll get your interest charge put back onto your credit card, and you might not know it, but the interest for the next month is actually, you're paying interest on that interest that is now on your statement if you haven't paid it off. So your 23% might end up being something more like 30% because you're not paying off your credit card. So how you can avoid this, of course, please, at the end of every single month, pay off your credit card balance in full. Even if it means you're gonna have a lot less money in your bank account or you have to use your credit card for next month, it's better to pay it off so at least you don't start accruing interest on what you've spent. This APR is actually made even worse by the fact that some credit cards always look at your agreement for these extra fees, but some credit cards, if you don't pay your balance for 60 days, you'll have a penalty APR, which is actually going to be much higher, usually over 30%. So even though you're being advertised the 23%, they will bump you up to a higher APR and not notify you because it's already in your credit card user agreement. They assume you know this, so they don't have to legally tell you, but always make sure that you're checking your statements to see what APR you have, what APR you would get if you don't pay your credit card. And even credit cards that have a low APR, like 11% for example, if you don't pay for the first month, normally it's the first month for the reduced APR credit cards, you start getting a penalty of the increased APR. So always be careful of your APR and what you're actually paying on your interest at the end of every month. So the number one reason why people use credit cards, according to a survey last year, is 44% of people use credit cards to get their cash back or points. Absolutely, yes. If you can manage your credit card, it can be an amazing tool. But there are still alternatives that you can use that are not credit cards, that you can still get cash back without the risk of having to pay interest if you just forget to pay a bill. So the thing that I recommend using prepaid cards that you load up with money, and then as you spend on that, you still get cash back. So in Canada, there are a few options. Number one, there's Wealthsimple, amazing tool, also great for buying stocks in Canadian dollars. Number two is Koho. Koho also has a little bit of an overdraft system where if you pay, if you go over your balance by up to $250, you just pay a $2 flat rate, which is not that bad. That's 1% if you maximize that $250. It's still $2 even if you go over by $3 or $4, so just be careful of that. Now, some people might say that they need to use their credit card because they just don't have cash. That's fine. But what I would recommend instead is ask your bank how much their APR is on a line of credit. Line of credits are normally less than 10%, and that it doesn't accumulate interest or anything. As long as you make your payments over time, no accrual, don't quote me on that. But line of credits already at a 9% or less than 10% APR, you are saving more than half of what you would be paying instead if you just used a credit card for those purchases. So line of credit is a great option. Number two, the ways that credit card companies make money off of you. The next biggest one is fees. So these fees, a lot of them are pretty straightforward, right? Like the annual fee, of course we know how much that is when we sign up. So we have the annual fees. We have a late fee that is usually applied. Not all credit cards do this, but it's between $30 and $50 normally. If you're just even late paying your statement for the previous month, you can be charged for being late, and that adds up. If you're late 3 times a year, that's $130 potentially that you're spending on just making late payments. And then the third thing is foreign transaction fees. Every credit card is different, again, with fees and interest, but always make sure you read your user agreement just to get an idea of what fees you are and aren't paying for. Because if you have multiple credit cards, chances are some of them charge fees for things and some of them don't. So for those things, you can use the one that doesn't charge you those fees. A big thing is foreign transaction fees. I have a card, for example, and it charges me $5 for each foreign transaction that I perform on the card, in addition to the currency conversion fee, which is like around 3% or something like that. So if I hadn't seen that and I was using that credit card in a different country for the entire trip, imagine how much that would add up. Let's say I use it 3 times per day on average, that's $15, and I'm there for 7 days. That's gonna be a lot of extra fees that I didn't have to pay if I'd instead used the card that only charges me for just the currency conversion and a lesser charge for the currency conversion. MasterCard is great for this. They usually only charge 1%, which is the lowest on the market right now, at least for credit cards. So that can be a great option. The ways that I suggest to avoid this is, at least for the late fees, you can schedule the payments to come out directly from your bank card or from your bank account with most credit card companies. So definitely set it up to have automatic withdrawals so that 1, you're not starting to accrue interest, and 2, you're not paying those late fees. They can take care of the payment for you. As long as you have money in your bank account to pay it, no problem. For the annual fee, I recommend switching to at least really evaluate your usage on the card, because a lot of companies, they advertise, oh, you get this benefit and this benefit, but how much of the benefits are you actually using? If you're not using any of them, maybe opting for a less expensive annual fee card that gets you a little bit less benefits, but maybe ones you'll actually use is ideal. And for the foreign transaction fees, Derek and I, we travel a lot. Like, we go a lot of different places. And the cheapest way that we've found to spend international money anywhere is using prepaid international cards. So you load money onto it, and then when you pay using their card, they charge you a very minimum, like usually 0.3% currency conversion fee, plus they use the mid-market rate. So there's no exchange rate markups, nothing like that. The one that we use, and we have been using for several years now, is called TransferWise. I'll link it down below in the description. That's just because in Canada, we can't get Revolut. If you're spending a lot of money, Revolut gives you cash back on your spending in addition to those low transaction fees. So definitely check that out as well if you're outside of Canada. One more thing, just a side note for that. If you're abroad and you're using your credit card to make a purchase, one bonus tip I have for you is to always use the local currency on the credit card machines. This isn't necessarily your credit card company charging you extra, but the merchant processor, so whoever you use the card with, they make their own internal marked up exchange rate. So you're always going to be spending more if you hit, for example, your credit card is based in the United States. You go somewhere in Europe, they ask, do you want to pay in euros or United States dollars? You always should say euro, because your credit card, most of the time, like 99% of the time, the fee that your credit card company will charge you for paying in euros will be less than what they will charge you for paying in US dollars. So just a quick note on that. There's going to be more notes, just how to save money internationally. I do have another video above, just how to save money when traveling internationally. So if you want to know specifically about how to save money planning a trip, be sure to check that out. So the third way you might be paying to use your credit card is actually, you don't even see it. It's something called a merchant fee. And this is something that the credit card companies charge the business to be able to make a transaction and collect money via credit cards. So this usually varies between 1.5 to 3.5%, depending on the country, the vendor, the industry, a whole bunch of different things. But what this means is generally businesses have a cost for that markup baked into their goods. So for example, if you're buying something that's $100, if that business didn't have to pay the merchant fees, you might actually be spending maybe $98. But because they know someone might use a credit card, they have to bump it up that extra few dollars to help cover the conversion fee. What I suggest for this is always when I'm traveling, or even locally in the United States. This is why if you pay in cash in gas stations in the United States, it costs less, because they don't bake in the cost of the merchant fee in there. So always check with any small business, especially they can facilitate this more, is ask if there's a cash discount. If there's a cash discount, and if it's more than 1% of savings, but you only get 1% cash back on your credit card, it might be more worth it just to pay in cash. You're helping the small business not have to pay these fees, and you're saving money. It's a win-win. Especially this works when you're traveling internationally in small towns or like developing nations and things like this. For example, here in Guatemala, always check if there's an extra fee for using your credit card, because it's not a credit card based system here. So a lot of the time they actually do have additional fees if you use a card, often very high. Here, a lot of merchants, they charge 6 or 7% extra on your purchase if you use a credit card. Always make sure that they don't charge you more. But on the flip side, as I mentioned earlier, if you ask if there's a cash discount, you may be able to get a few dollars off. In some cases, it's quite a substantial deal because in some places like Turkey that we've been, they prefer cash because then they may or may not have to pay tax on it. Plus, they don't have to pay the merchant fee, so they're saving a lot more than 3%. And that saving goes on to you, the consumer. So the fourth way that credit cards have you spend more while actually using your credit card is with these rewards programs. So we all kind of know about this, maybe some credit cards have a specific higher cashback amount for specific businesses or specific franchises, right? Our favorite ones. But a lot of the time, if you really think about it, those rewards are one of two things, or three, I suppose. One, they're on a very expensive option in the market. So let's say it's for a grocery store that charges maybe already 30% more than other grocery stores in the area. But now you're incentivized to shop there because you get 8% cash back, but you're spending $30 more every grocery run just because it's an expensive option. Two, it's something you might not even want to spend money on or buy in the first place. For example, I always see in my credit cards these offers, right? And for some of them, it's,
spend $200 at any Ray-Ban shop and get $40 back.
Cool, I get $40 off Ray-Bans. I can go shop then. Let me go buy some Ray-Bans. No, if you're not going to buy those Ray-Bans, why, it just kind of makes you want to buy things just to get that cash back so you feel like you got a good deal. But if you're not gonna buy that thing anyways, you're kind of technically wasting money. So you wasted that $160, that $40 you got cash back, cool, but you still wasted $160 if you didn't need that item. So only use the programs, cashback, additional things, rewards programs, if it aligns with what you're going to be spending anyways. This time of year, around Christmas, it's great because a lot of the gifts that we do buy people are from these, so it makes sense. But if you don't need to go shopping, you don't need to buy things from vendors that you normally don't go to, just don't do it. It's not worth wasting that $160 to get that feeling that you won by getting $40 back. Now, number 5, this is a bit of something that there's not really much we can do about, but still something that I think we should be aware of as consumers. Number 5 is a lot of these credit card companies actually make money off of us in the back end by selling our data, unfortunately. Derek and I are in marketing, so we do know about these websites that you go to. The Big MC, for example, they collect your data on your credit card statement. They make assumptions about how much money you make, your interests, what you own, what you want to own, and then they sell that information to advertisers to be able to contact you directly on social media platforms via advertisements. It's just part of the digital world that we live in. I'm not 100% sure how they do this. It's very big data, but one of the ways I think they do it is they use your email address that you sign up to, to be able to manage your credit card, and then they match it with somebody who has a social media account. I think that's one way that it can happen. So one thing, just to be a conscious consumer, conscious digital person in general, is start looking at different options that help hide your digital identity. For me, I always use a privacy-oriented email account. So not Gmail. I use Proton Mail a lot. It's a digital security first email and it's absolutely free. They have a free version, about the same benefits as a Gmail account. So definitely look into different alternatives just to, help maybe hide your identity a little bit online. But just know that that's also one way that credit cards make money off of you. One more thing I forgot to mention is the fact that there's something called a minimum payment. So this is a mistake I made back when I was 19 years old, just got my credit card, I was traveling, and I don't know why I thought this, but I thought if you make your minimum payments, you won't be charged interest because you're showing in good faith that you're paying off your balance. This is not the case. The minimum payment simply means that you keep your APR that they've advertised to you. If you don't make your minimum payment, then your APR goes up, as discussed before. So minimum payments are one way that they make you feel like you're controlling your payments to them and keeping a low APR, but you're actually spending more money. Another way that the credit system incentivizes you to purchase things is actually the buy now, pay later system. So this has seen such a rise in the last few years with things like Klarna, Square Pay, different things like that. where you can buy something and then pay over time in 4 months. You're still paying the same amount of money, but because you don't feel it right away, you're incentivized to buy more stuff. Now, this can be great for many different reasons, including tax optimization if you have a business, to roll over expenses into different years, and things like that. But for the average consumer, in the long term, it's actually more detrimental than helpful because you end up buying more things that you actually can't afford. So that's one thing to look out for as well. Another really great option for cashback in Canada that I forgot to mention is Neo. So Neo is another kind of digital bank. They have the prepaid cards and great cashback. Just make sure you look at their cashback programs to make sure it aligns with your spending. If you have any extra tips or tricks or things that I may have missed, or maybe correct me, I'm not 100% right about everything all the time. So please feel free to drop a comment. We're here to help teach each other and help each other save money. So the more people sharing their insights in the comments, the better. That's what we're here for. And we can help educate as many people as possible. So there you have it. 5 ways that you're unintentionally paying your credit card for using your credit card. If you like the content of the video, make sure to give a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button to learn more about how to save money, make money, everything in between on your journey to be financially independent. I do have this video up top if you want to have more insights on how to save money when traveling internationally. Derek and I have been at this for a long time, so definitely give it a look if you're planning on going anywhere anytime soon. And thanks for joining me. See you in the next one.